Okay. For those of you who joined us on Facebook, I apologize. You're going to have to hear me read the intro all over again. But for those who join us on Zoom, welcome. It's great to have you here at another one of our Educator-led webinar series. So my name is Tu. I am a member of the customer-facing team here, and I help with customer service, sales, and marketing. So you might see my name when I answer some of your help tickets. I want to let you know that one of the things about Boom that really sets us apart is our student data reports. Because Boom cards are self-grading, you can access performance and progress reports with a click of a button. And we're lucky to have Fran Amato here today to talk to us more about how to access those reports and how she uses them with her students. And Fran's also an author, so she creates Boom cards, and her store is called Tech Savvy Teach, and I'll leave a link to her store in the chat box pretty soon. Just to let you know, this webinar is being recorded. The recording is going to be on our YouTube channel, and it's also being live streamed on Facebook. So you can go to our Facebook page and watch a recording if you missed it or you have to leave early. A couple other details. There is a Q&A box below. If you have any questions, please post it in the Q&A box, and we're going to have a live Q&A session with Frances after her presentation. If you have any comments, please feel free to put those in the chat box. And after the presentation, we're going to ask you to fill out a webinar feedback form. It is really valuable for us to know how we can improve our future webinars for our users. So I'm going to put up a poll. I'd love to get to know more about folks who are here, and I see people are already answering the poll. Thank you so much. Let's just review what we've got here. Lots of folks from special ed, great, speech therapy, also general ed, and occupational therapists as well. The predominant amount of our participants today are from elementary school, but we also have a good amount of middle and high school folks, as well as special ed schools and therapy centers. And we've got some people joining us from Canada, Central America. Interesting. Great. Thank you so much for taking the time to fill out that poll. And now I'm going to hand it over to Fran.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I am very happy to bring you this presentation. I absolutely love Boom Learning and using it with my students. So a little bit about me. I am a special education teacher and have been for 18 years. And finding stuff that works in the classroom that also takes data, which alleviates having to have paper records of everything, is not only time saving, but it's so beneficial to be able to see the trends in your data within your classroom. So I am going to share my presentation. So we are going to be looking at Boom Learning for student reports. And just some of the objectives of this session is really to have a basic understanding of Boom Learning, creating engaging activities, and how to leverage those protocols to create center-based instruction, which supports the use of IEPs, that supports educational technology in the classroom, and ensuring that we have data to inform our instruction. So my question is, what does progress monitoring mean to you? And if you have a phone, you can scan this in, or I know somebody's going to drop the link in the chat, and we're just going to use a little Mentimeter. It's something I like to use to gauge my audience. So please definitely share your information. So what is progress monitoring for you? I'll also add it into the chat just in case. So any words, any thoughts, anything that you think of when you hear progress monitoring? Thank you. Ongoing accountability, data, regression, headway. Oh, I'm loving some of these answers. Tracking data, plateau, identifying students' needs. Yes, all of these are very, very pertinent when we're talking about progress monitoring. So we're going to give it another minute so I could give everybody a fair chance to answer. Snapshot of student learning. I like that a lot. Checklist, trends, data collection. Yeah, this is all a big part of our progress monitoring, our student learning, and how we're using it in the classroom. And now for the second question, which it should let you do. Can you use technology for progress monitoring? Or are you using technology for progress monitoring? So I could see in the chat a few people are saying yes, that they're using it. Okay, not yet. Well, that's a great reason why you're here today, because we're going to definitely be able to talk about the different ways you can use it. So we are going to jump back into my little presentation. So thank you for participating in the Mentimeter. So something about Boom Learning is you're allowed to create your own decks. For me, this is very powerful because when I want to target student IEP goals, student goals, learning habits, if I want to target something I see my students are having trouble with, the ability to create your own decks gives you power over what your students are seeing. So all memberships in Boom allow you to create your own decks, and Boom Learning is an accessible site that gives you many tools. And these are just a little preview of some things. When you get started, something I like to do is really think about the topic or what the learning objective is. What do I want my student to do by the end of this task? And choose your modality, how you're going to design it, how they're going to be completing it. And then you start to design and play in the studio. And if you haven't tried the studio out yet, I highly suggest opening it up and just looking at it and seeing all the amazing things you could do. And then you preview when the work is complete to make sure everything works. Now, the nice thing is, depending on your student's needs, there's multiple response options. So if my student can answer with a button, they could answer by clicking on a picture. There's multiple choice in both pictures and words. There's drag and drops, fill in the blanks, clicks to choose, and there's so much more. You could really build out and create anything appropriate for your particular students. And the versatility of this program is just something I absolutely love. So let's take a quick look. So now I'm going to show you very quickly what this looks like in Boom Learning. And I give 4 sample activities. So we're going to go through 2. So now if I open this up, and anytime you open it up, I left it to go to the store. That way you have the ability to try it on your own because I didn't want it to expire on you. So this is our preview, and students have to drag the correct color into the correct basket. So this is a color identification activity. It's a simple sorting activity. And students complete it and submit it. And that's the end of that activity. So now if I look at another activity, we can look at an adding activity. And now this is, again, is going to bring you to the store, and this happens to be free. So you are able to preview it. Now, I did not create this one. So this is a mathematics, and it wants to know, how do we make 10? We click on the answer. We drag the answer. So there's multiple ways to do it. Now this one tells us to click on the answer again. And when a student gets something wrong, what's really nice is there's the ability to self-correct, but it still tells you that on the first try, the student did not get it correct. So that's a little preview of that one. And I'll also show you this one. This is one that I did create. And we did this on properties of matter. So now my cards, because I work in special education, they all have audio to them. So all of my students will hear my voice, reading them the instruction, reading them the information, besides going through the activity. And then very simple activities. Then they have to choose between the two different properties, whether it's rough and smooth, square and round. And they go through it, and I'll receive the data from it. So those were just some sample activities and different ways that you can really use Boom Learning. So now we are going to take a little view of what a teacher's view for data looks like. So now if I want to go into my classroom, I can go into reports, and when I click on reports, it'll tell me what the student did. And there is a little legend at the bottom that really explains how it works for you. There's the amount of plays, the mastery level, which is how many they've gotten right, the time it took them to complete the activity, their average, best, and last score. So now if you are familiar with IEPs, many times our IEP goals will read that to have mastery, they must do this 80% of the time, or 4 out of 5 trials. So you can assign each Boom Learning deck 5 times, 10 times, and have the students work through it and gather all of that data and use that towards IEP goals, towards classroom learning targets, towards reading or math, any type of intervention. And now when you go to look at the reports, and we're looking at our students. So these are 2 samples of one of my classes that I've had. So they were assigned to do a weather report, the states of matter, and the properties of matter. And now the property of matter is what you saw. So when student scores, it'll tell you with the key, their best, their last, their mastery. It'll tell you the amount of plays they've also had. So for example, if it's a fractional play, that means that they attempted it, but they didn't finish fully completing the deck. Sometimes it might have 0.0 as a play, which means they clicked into it, but didn't do anything. And when you see a blank box, that means the assignment was not completed. So you gather a lot of information from a little bit of data. You could see where your students are struggling. For example, in the middle, you could see one student was able to do the states of matter in a minute. Another student, it took 3 minutes and 20 seconds. So I could say, you know, maybe they were really thinking about it. Maybe they struggled with it. You know, it lets you see patterns in your student. So now I could see that the weather report, which was a quick, simple thing, they just had to drag up the weather. One student took 29 seconds, one student took a minute. So this also helps you gauge your activities, especially when you're using it in the classroom. Now, I like to use things for center-based instruction. So if I wanted to use Boom Learning in a center, I know the average time of this task might be 2 minutes or might be 5 minutes. So I know how to time my centers. I know when and where adult support is needed. And I also know what my students are doing. And that brings me to live monitoring, which is a newer feature of Boom Learning, which I'm very excited about. I have not gotten to use it yet because we've been remote pretty much for 2 years, and we just started our year here in New York, and we're just getting back. But live monitoring pushes data to the reports tabs while students are actively playing. So this is great to have just in time for intervention, in person, individual instruction. For me, this makes my center-based lessons go to a whole other level because we are able to actually see what the students are doing live. So I could be monitoring my other centers. I could have my iPad or my phone and see what students are currently doing on it. So that way I don't have to stand at the center with my students who are working on Boom Learning. I'm able to travel around the room and support others while still seeing what's going on. And then it gives me the ability to really look, support if needed, see if somebody's getting questions consistently wrong or the instruction maybe needs to be targeted a little bit better because they're not getting it. I have that feedback right away. So I'm able to stop what I'm doing and go over and assist, ask questions, see what they're not understanding. So it's a little different than when you have to go look at your data after it's already done and you really don't know what they struggled with. You see they got 5 wrong, or you see they got 3 wrong. But here you're actually seeing what they're getting wrong when they're getting it wrong. So it's great for flexible and targeted interventions. And it's very simple to use. You can access the live monitoring right from the report tab, click go live, and you're ready to start. So now your students also have a view of their account and progress. So they can progress monitor themselves, which is always a skill we like to teach students so that they can be accountable for their own work. So this is my sample student. And so students are able to earn rewards by playing their decks. And these rewards can be spent to unlock avatars for their accounts. Now, I'm not sure about any of your students. My students absolutely love avatars, anything that they could buy and spend points on. They love it. The little diamond in the middle is the rewards they can earn for answering questions correctly while playing a deck. And then there's also these little lightning bolts. So it tells you a little bit about the rewards students can earn by answering questions correctly on a deck, even if they've answered it before. So like I said, your students might do the decks 5 times. They're still going to be earning these even if they answered it correctly. They can also see the type of work that they did. So they could see that it was completed, and they could see that they got 11 out of 12 right. So this is a nice amount of information for your student to really self-monitor and self-progress. Also, we're working with a lot of families. Families always like to know this information. So if a parent wants to look into it and check into it, they could see exactly how their student performed on the task or their child. So now something else we could do is printing and saving data for progress monitoring. So if you're like me, a lot of our schools use binders. They want to make sure that we're able to save the data so we could show the data, we could track our trends. So one of the beautiful things about Boom Learning is you can print your decks for data binders or save it as a PDF. So now I like to do this when I'm doing it in this fashion, one at a time. And this is what it looks like. It'll list all of your students. It'll list their scores and all of the information that you would see under your report tabs for this task. So you could save it as a PDF. You could print it to put in the binder, however you're most comfortable. You could also upload this digitally as well. Another way to show data is using an Excel spreadsheet, which is one of the features I absolutely love about Boom Learning, because spreadsheets make it so much easier for me to track my work, especially with my students. It becomes a nice, easy, organized, clear way to print data. And it works for all students' assignments. And what's nice is over here on the left would be the student's name. So say this is Francis up here for the first one. I could see all of the assignments given to the class for this week, day, month. And I could see how many playthroughs they did, the mastery, the time, the average, the best, and the last. And all of my students, I could cut these out into little pieces and put it in my binder book. I could leave it. Now I'm a specialist teacher, so I go classroom to classroom. So if I just wanted the grades for my students, excuse me, if I just wanted my students' grades by class, I could just put this in a binder and keep all of their information together. But what I like most, as I mentioned, is the ability to do multiple playthroughs to address IEP goals. Now, looking at a student's overall progress. Students can earn rewards by playing the decks, as we said earlier, and they unlock avatars. The reward students earn from answering questions. So now, and this is also the reward students earn. So now you can see this student has done a lot of decks. And now these were not all mine. These were between mine and the classroom teacher. So mine was all about the weather I assigned caring for the earth. Their teacher did all of the blends, the diagraphs, the coin counting. So it is nice when students have Boom Learning accounts because multiple teachers can assign it. And that's one of the positive things about hooking up your Boom Learning accounts to your students' school email. So whether you use Google Classroom or another school email, when all of the teachers are using the same email for that student, we're able to have a real full view and picture of what a student's learning, how they're learning it, the progress they're making, and the work that they're doing. And now it'll also tell you on the bottom of the page their recent plays. And again, it gives you a little bit of the data. So now their most recent play was an assignment I gave to them, which was properties of matter. And you could see from this, it tells you when it was done. This was 6/18 of 2020. It tells you they're correct, they're incorrect, how many cards, and the time spent on it. So you could see what your students worked on recently, as well as the parents. So if you want to kind of check up on what students are doing, how they're doing it, maybe see what order they're doing it, that information is all available. So for me, that's also helpful when I'm looking at my classes and I'm like, well, how did they choose what assignments to really do first or last? How long are they spending on it? what did they like? What did they not like? It gives just so much more information for me. And now I've assigned a lot of this through Google Classroom because that's what we happen to use. So I know when my students have the assigned work, then I could see where recently in their last somewhat decks they completed the work. So now I am going to go back to the Mentimeter. And this is just for me to know how you're planning on using Boom Learning this year. And, especially I'd love to know how I'd be able to help you with that and any questions you have. So I'm going to share this link in the chat. I'm sure somebody might have already, but just in case. So how or what subjects are you planning to use Boom Learning with for progress monitoring? Or do you hope to use it if you haven't done it already? And I'll give you some time to answer that. And I know this is a short session compared to some of the PD sessions you've probably went to as teachers and professionals. But the nice thing is, we will give you a way to reach out if you need help and support. And you'll also be able to follow up with me also if you have questions, even after the Q&A and everything is completed. So you could put it on Mentimeter, you could drop it in the chat. What subjects are you hoping to use it for? Yes, I agree. It could definitely be used to progress monitor any subject. Only letting you answer the second one. I apologize then. I'm not sure why it's only going into the second one, but that's okay. We will move to the second one, and that's fine. Thank you for letting me know. I'm sorry for the technical issue. Unfortunately, with technology, it does happen from time to time. So how are you planning to use Boom Learning? IEP goals, intervention, reading and math goals, vocabulary, language learning intervention, inferences, articulation drills, IEP goals, constant monitoring, mainly ELA, enrichment, very nice. I see some more reading and ELA goals in the chat. So there are unlimited ways that you could use Boom Learning within the classroom. So I am very, very happy to see that so many people are going to be using it in different ways. So now we are going to jump back. And so these are different ways to reach me. And I'm very, very easily found on Twitter at techsavvy_teach. And you can message and DM me there. You can also tweet at me. And if you need help, if you need support, I'd be more than willing to help out. So thank you so much for joining. And I look forward to helping you with your questions.
Thank you so much, Fran, for coming and volunteering your time and presenting this for all of our users. I do have a question here from Tracy. Tracy asks, can Boom cards be set up for a certain amount of time? Some progress monitoring is for limited times. If so, how do you set it up for a limited time?
So that really depends on what exactly you're trying to do. So for me, with my Boom Learning, how I set it up for limited times is I happen to time my centers. So my centers will last anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes, depending on the activity and the task. The Boom Learning materials that I select to use during that time, I make sure to look through to make sure they're not extensively long, that it's something we've done in the class. And if it's something new to the student, you're going to want a lot more time for it. But to fully put them on a time trial, it's not like you're going to say, okay, this has to be done in 1 minute. But there are ways to really use it and think about your time within the classroom and how you're going to do it.
Thanks, Fran. Does anybody else have any other questions for Fran? I'd like to ask you a couple questions, Fran, while we have some time. So with the Boom reports, what is your favorite way to use reports? I mean, what do you find the most useful?
For me, it's really understanding after my lesson what my students took away from it, what they know and what they're still struggling with. Because then I can adapt my unit worth of lessons based on where my students are performing. So for an example, I work at special education. I was working with a 12 to 1-to-1 class today, which are some of my higher functioning students. And I gave them an activity to complete. And I could see that half of my students were right on target where they needed to be. I had, I believe it was 2 or 3 who were ahead, and I had a few who were struggling. So being able to take that and say, hey, okay, 75% of the class is doing well. Maybe one of my centers or one of my mini lessons tomorrow, I need to pull those students that struggled and really go in and teach those concepts deeper. I need to really take that time so they can build up that understanding. So for me, it allows me to really look at what I'm doing, look at my classes, and look at the students' work to make informed decisions as a teacher. And that's something we do all the time anyway. But just because I have it digitally, I have the ability to go back and look at it. Because when you're rushing through a classroom, when you're rushing through a lesson, especially if you're taking data on the fly, what happens if you lose that piece of paper? What happens if, an incident happened in the classroom or something went on and you don't remember which students answered how many questions right. You don't remember who seemed to struggle. Well, you have it in black and white there for you that you could go back, look at, and take that progress monitoring and use it to inform your instruction.
I have noticed that a lot of SLPs, speech language pathologists, use Boom, and they don't tend to use reports very much. They tend to kind of score the students' answers by hand. And I wonder why would they do that if they have access to these reports right at their fingertips? And I think part of it. Yeah, I'd love to hear your insight.
Speech and language pathologists. Being in a special education school, we have about 30 speech and language pathologists on staff. And so a lot of them were using it at first without the reports and just using fast pins because they had free accounts and they were searching for some free materials to use. And once I actually got my school a subscription to Boom Learning, and I onboarded both classroom teachers and speech and language pathologists, I saw how much they started using the reports more because that feature, when you're in a free account is different. And so many people don't realize how great of a feature it is. So I speak to them, they're like, I don't have to worry about homework. I could just give the parents this information over the Remind app. If the student's out, this is what we were planning on doing today. And then they have those reports there. And I think sometimes you just don't know. And when you're not sure and you don't know, you need somebody to really show you how to use it, why it's useful. And that's buy-in with all teachers. They have to find a use for it. So if they're not finding a use for it because they don't know about it, they need that experience. They need that exposure to how these reports could be beneficial. My SLPs have to do data. They have to upload their information to a platform called CSIS. They have 5 places to put everything. So this saves them so much time by doing the reports, because there it is. They're able to print it out. They're able to copy and paste it where they need to, and they don't have to worry. So I think it's just more about people getting that experience and exposure to using the data reports, how to use it, and when it's appropriate to use.
Good point. I've got a couple more questions, so if you don't mind.
Of course.
Someone asked, sometimes the students speed through the deck, so it really is not an accurate assessment of their progress. How do you account for that?
Well, that depends on what type of classroom you're in. So now I know in regular education, it's a little bit harder to track your students. I have usually, when I'm setting up my classroom, I try to have an adult by every center. And so I have them look to see if any students are just clicking whatever and clicking it through. Because then we have prompts to slow them down. And then we review what they did. And now again, if somebody's just speeding through and you catch that, well, you know, that turn doesn't count. And it's all about setting up those policies, those procedures within your classroom and having students understand it. So I have like a little boom learning, like not a learning task, but almost like rules for boom learning. I'm going to try my best. I'm going to take my time. I'm going to complete my work. And so when we see students like rushing through the work, and we have a lot of students who will rush through work because they think when they get through the work, they could just play and have a game. So we kind of review these rules and routines. And, you know, it takes some time to get them in the habit. Another thing I do is we reward the students. So when I see they're taking their time, and whether they're getting it right or wrong, but they're taking their time, they're trying, they're doing the right thing, they're following the procedures, you know, giving those little intrinsic rewards, whether it's a little sticker, whether maybe at the end of the week, I'll give them some free choice time, and building that up, that repertoire in your classroom so they know speeding through things isn't going to help them earn what they want.
Good point. I've got a couple more questions for you. Is it possible to work with a student via the teacher login other than FastPlay so that it tracks their data? Do you always have to have the student log into their account? It would be so much easier for SLPs to take data if it was just via their account and not constantly moving between accounts.
Well, now, I guess maybe you're using one device to do it, but something I like to do when I'm working with students, I don't ever use the same device that my student's going to use for Boom Learning. And I have everything set up and ready for them to log in. I print out those lovely little cue cards that I have them with their name and information. You know, our students, we are, I guess, blessed in the fact that we've now moved more towards one-to-one. So our students do have devices that do have Boom Learning on it. So it's not where we're switching accounts. So for me, I don't really have that issue, to be very honest. I can understand what you mean and how that could be a little painstaking if you're going back and forth from the teacher account to the student account, to a teacher account, to a student account. Something I would suggest doing is, I'm not sure if you're on Donors Choose, but maybe getting a second device donated to your room, or if your school maybe has a second device that you can use, something that will only be for student accounts. Because yes, I could understand the headache that would be to go back and forth between teacher and student. That was my suggestion to a few of my teachers a few years back when they were just starting to use Boom Learning before we moved to one-to-one.
Okay. And the next question is, I'm an SLP and I would prefer to work with them in a session and track the data in the session. Logging in and out of student accounts is way too tedious when we have giant caseloads.
So again, that I do understand, but unfortunately, to get that student data where it's accurate and for your students, you do have to log in and out. And that really is the benefit of having them to have accounts instead of using a fast pin. Because if you're using the fast pin, yeah, it's great. You could go through it and then you could track it, but then you kind of lose that background data that you're going to get from the Boom Learning website. That way you don't have to worry about, did I miss one question that was asked? Did I score this right? You know, you never have to worry about how fast you have to work. And I know how hard SLPs work. I love my SLPs, and I know how fast writing, taking notes, everything that you have to do during a session that happens, plus possibly dealing with behaviors, dealing with distractions. So I'm sure it adds into a lot. And I know you guys have giant caseloads, but I would definitely say trying to think about maybe a creative way to do it. I mean, for me, I don't find logging in and out of students' accounts is a little tedious because we've worked with our students to log into their accounts via device. So as long as it's not on the same device as yours, as I said in the previous question, I think it makes it a lot easier when you're using more than one device.
Okay. Any other questions while we have Francis here? All right. Well, thank you again, Francis.
I see somebody raise their hand, so they might want to come off mute to ask a question.
All right. Let me, Chevelle, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead, Chevelle.
Hi, yes, you pronounced it right. On the Boom cards, I'm just started using them. I started last year, but I wasn't able because my I had a lot of stuff going on. But I'm using them this year, and I wanted to know when I assign the lesson to the kids, I just click on whatever grade assignment is on there, but it doesn't say that it's assigned to the kids. So I just exit out of it. Is that right?
Oh, so I'll show you really quickly. I'll share my screen and show you what it looks like, because there is an easy way to do it. I know it's a little confusing at first with assigning lessons. Give me 1 second to just exit out of this and get into my Boom Cards account. So now if I go into my library and I want to assign something, I go into actions and I go into assign. And then when I click that box, that lesson is now assigned to every student in this class. So all 7 of my students, if they log in, they will see this assignment. So now if I go into my sample class, I'm going to assign that as well. So now let me log out of here and I'll show you very quickly what it looks like on the student's view to sign in. So now I could see I have this deck assigned to me and it's not completed. So I log into my account, I'm here, and this deck is there for me to complete the assignment. Something I also like to do when I am assigning a deck as a teacher is as I said, I use Google Classroom. I get the hyperlink to that deck and I put that in a Google Classroom assignment. So all they do is go into that classroom, click that deck, and then it just prompts them to sign into their account and start. So that's another way to make sure that they are getting into their correct lesson.
Right. So how do I get the hyperlink if I
Okay.
wanted to do it like that?
Give me 1 second. Let me log out of here and log back into my teaching account. So now if you go to your library, now we just went to this assignment before when we clicked assign. If you go to hyperlink, you click this hyperlink and you copy and paste it. So you'll highlight it and then you'll copy it and paste it. And you paste that into whichever digital platform you're using.
Oh, okay.
Students.
Okay, got you. Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem.
Thanks, Chevelle, for your question. And I think if there are no more questions, we're gonna conclude this webinar. But before you go, I did want to kind of recap what Frances mentioned. Frances showed us how to choose individualized and accessible student-centered activities called our boom cards. She also showed you how to use boom reports for progress monitoring, how to use live monitoring to remotely monitor your students' performance while they're actually playing the boom cards, and how to export your boom progress reports into an Excel spreadsheet. So before you go, I really would appreciate it if you did fill out the webinar feedback form. I'm going to share another link to that in our chat box right here. And again, your comments and feedbacks are taken very seriously, and we really do want to make sure we provide the best features and services to you. So if you could fill that out, we'd greatly appreciate it. Again, this recording will be shared on our YouTube channel, and since it was live streamed on our Facebook page, you can also go to our Facebook page and watch the full webinar. So I'm going to, if you need any further help, I'm going to show you how you can get help from us. Let me share my screen really quick. So again, thank you. And if you have any questions, you can email us at help@boomlearning.com. You can also go to our website at wow.boomlearning.com, and you can even call us. So we've got a number there, and you will probably reach a live actual person, which might be shocking in this day and age. So feel free to contact us if you have any questions. And next week, please join us for another educator-led webinar on how to use Boom for EIP progress reporting. So that kind of ties right into what Frances just talked about. So thank you again, Frances, for volunteering your time today to talk to us about reports. And in the meantime, happy booming, everybody. Bye.